I'd like you to come out at 7 o'clock in the morning and inspire this group of people who are all in business around our community. And I thought, you know, inspiration and 7 o'clock don't really go that hand in hand. So I'm hoping that today it will actually prompt you to think about some things with respect to your leadership, your teams, and how to motivate people. And very interesting, I saw the flyer on the table, which actually was about how to motivate your teams, and that's a little bit about what I'd like to touch on with you today. One of the things I'm going to show you, I always like to bring something new so that everybody walks away, and I'm hoping that this is new. But Anne said to me, how did you do that this morning? The old function B control, where you can actually turn your screen off. Has anybody seen that before? Okay, so for those of you who haven't, if you present at any point of time, I can tick that off. I've shown you something new. Job done, inspired. Just in terms of my own organisation that I work for, I have been a business owner for 12 years and decided, with respect to my own personal goals, that it was time to go back to the community. So it's been really nice to hear the community word being used with so much passion this morning. I work for an organisation called Leisure Networks, and we're based in Geelong. Just in terms of our profile, has anyone heard of us? Oh, good, because we do certainly have some profile issues which we need to attend to. But our business is really around supporting people to participate in their communities and supporting communities to provide quality participation options. We are an organisation that absolutely thrives on innovation. In fact, our trademark is new ideas. And we need that because we're always searching for government money. And when you're searching for government money, you just can't stay still. You have to be looking outward to see what's next, what's new, what's missing, what can be developed. And because of that culture of new ideas and looking outward, Leisure Networks has become a leader in itself in and around inclusion, particularly for people with disability, and also changing the culture of sport and recreation organisations to remove some of the less healthy attributes of those clubs and associations and making them places of health and promotion. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, our gig. So leadership, I mean, if I was sitting in your spot, I'd be thinking, well, who is this girl who's coming to talk to us about leadership? I'm no Christine Nixon. I'm really not a business leader within my own community. But I have had the good fortune over the last 8 years to be commissioned by the Australian Sports Commission to work with women in leadership in sport and recreation. So from women who sit on national boards to Olympic coaches to community women who are, are working in and around their community clubs. And from that, I have become really quite fascinated with the leadership process. I'm a leadership learner, if you like, not a leadership leader. And it's fascinating for me, leadership, because of what it does to your organisation. It can turn your organisation for the better or for the worse quite quickly. It can define the entire culture of your organisation, and it can certainly define how motivated people are within that organisation. So I'd really like to, in some ways, confess to you that I'm not a leadership expert, but explore some of the intricacies with respect to leadership. It's a really good time for me. When Diane rang me, I sort of said, oh, right, more work. But actually, in fact, it's a really a pressing time for me because I'm about to change my work role within Leisure Networks to a role that engages with both management and leadership. The role that I'm about to undertake has me managing a reasonably sized team, a team of 10, but it has in its core leadership. In fact, it has in its title leadership. So one of the questions I really wanted to explore today with you was, how do you find the balance between managing people and leading people? And then finally, how do I get the best out of the team that I'm managing? whilst also making sure that the tasks and the jobs that they have to do get done. If we look at leadership broadly, and if I was going to do a bit of a word association, and I chose not to because I thought that would mean you'd have to think, and that's usually not that popular at this time. So, but if we were to do a bit of a word association, I'm sure some of these things are the sorts of things you'd be thinking about when we talk about good leaders. You know, people who are motivated, people who are creative, and be aware that creativity really does take time. You have to remove yourselves from the rigours of your day-to-day to actually build that creativity in your organisation. People who are passionate, heard the word used this morning, which was fantastic, because it's at the very core of leadership that you actually are passionate about something. That's what draws people in. People who can inspire, and your own motivation, your own passion is often, very, very contagious and is part of that inspirational process. People who can engage, and engagement's not just about telling people how you feel. It's about working with people, listening to their points of view, considering what they have to offer, considering their ideas. And people who are admired and have high levels of integrity, and that's something that I'm hoping that we'll all aspire to, whether we take on a leadership role or not. I want to add something there with respect to a leadership trait that I think is incredibly important, and that is outward looking. I don't know, have any of you got teenage kids? Okay, so those of you who've got teenage children, are you familiar with the selfie? Yeah? Okay. So for those of you who don't know what a selfie is when you get your mobile phone and you turn it, similar to what Anne's doing to me here, and you turn it towards yourself and you take a picture of yourself. Now it might be me with the Eiffel Tower, just happens to be behind me, me at the footy, or just me in the beanbag with my new do. And then that gets instantaneously sent out to the mobile phones of the people who've got that particular smart chat or photo snap app on their phone. Puts your picture up on their phone for about 10 seconds and then it disappears. And I was sort of watching my son engaging in this sort of selfie business and thought, you know what, when we're talking about leadership, I really want you to turn that phone the other way around. Start looking out. Start looking out at what's out there. What are the gaps? Where is there need for development? What are some of the new things that we might be able to bring to our community? And start to notice people. Start to notice who is included, who's not included, who's excluded, who is got points of view that could be on my team. So when we look at some of the things that leaders do, not only are they outward looking, but they're outward giving. And I would say one of the things that I would say about leadership is not about me. Leadership's about you and the outside. So when you look at some of the functions of the leader, they're the coach, give. They're the mentor, they give. They lead by example, they're giving. They maintain their teams, they're giving. They're trying to develop people, or their followers if you like, to build them up to become leaders. And the best leaders are those who end up with a group of leaders, not a group of followers. It's not about me and it's not about I. And I think people say, oh, you know, there's no I in our team, but there is me and all of the individuals that make up that team. When we start to look at my team, and I've got a very diverse group of people in my team, from some highly skilled to some quite green. So getting the balance right with respect to them. But I love this quote by Peter Drucker, who writes quite a lot in and around leadership, is that leaders who work effectively just don't say I. And that's not because they're trained or they sort of have it embedded that we don't say I around here. It's an instinct. It's an instinct to say we and to bring in the efforts, to celebrate other people's achievements and to actually have a very team orientation all the time. And that's, to me, I think, a really big part of leadership. So if we get back to the question around management and leadership and the difference, I'm always interested. I've worked with now some 300 sports leaders, and as I say, from the woman who's running around the football club, making sure there's plenty of women at the football club, to the likes of Rena Hall, who was on the Australian Cricket Board, who was really instrumental in getting the third day test family free tickets at the Boxing Day test. So lots of different types of influences. And it's interesting when I've got a group of women in the room and I say to them, you know, stand up if you think you're a leader, and then ask them why they think they're a leader. And for a lot of them, their first response is, well, because I'm the CEO of the National Hockey Association, or I'm a senior manager in the organisation that I work, or I'm a coach, so I must be leading the teams. And if we flip the coin, on the other side of the coin are the women who don't stand. And I say to them, why don't you stand up? And they say, well, because I don't really have a role that I can lead in. Or I'm so far down the organisational chart that I don't have a leadership capacity within my organisation. And that's where I think it's really important that people understand that you don't have to have a title to be a leader. In fact, most of my leadership has been bottom up. And you don't necessarily, if you've got the title, that doesn't necessarily mean that you lead. I don't know about you, but I've been managed by a number of micromanagers. Anyone else been managed by a micromanager? Incredibly disempowering. No creativity, no new ideas in this place. We do things as we've done, and let me just have a little look about how you're going about this. No, we don't do it this way. So, very disempowering, not team building at all. And it's a great example of when someone manages the situation but really doesn't offer a great deal of leadership. So, what are the key differences? Because this is why I sort of think, oh, gee, how do we do this? You know, moving into this new role, how am I going to manage and lead at the same time, given that the orientation for my role is team leader? So I'm thinking there's a bit of emphasis on leadership here. And if we look at some of the writings around the differences between the two, they're quite significantly different. In fact, they're almost moving in different directions. So in the first instance, in the management, and there's no real judgment with respect to these because they're both imperative for the effective running of an organisation or effective teams. We have to do the work. We've got to get the tasks done. We need to meet the KPIs. We need to meet budget. We need to report on outcomes. We need to report on output. We do need to, in some ways, control what our current situation is. And I do have an organisational chart that has me as, for want of a better word, their boss or their accountability factor. It is about giving instruction. We do know some of the answers and we're going to work within the constraints of what we know because that's what we have to do. That's what our application said we would do. We do need to risk manage and make sure that we minimise the risk, and of course we're going to be working as a team. Let's flip it now, because that's the management side of the coin. Instead of working with KPIs and plans and business plans and operations in the leadership sense, we're going to be working with vision. We're going to be working with new ideas. We're going to shut our eyes at times, which might seem a little bit daggy to you, but we're going to shut our eyes and we're going to actually have a little dream about what our organisation could look like or what sport and recreation clubs could look like. What do we see when we think about the things we'd like to see? And that takes time. We are working with followers, so we're not working within that hierarchy in leadership. We're actually working to build people up. We don't know the answers. We ask and stimulate questions. So how do you do the two in line with each other? We facilitate ownership. We want our team to basically take responsibility, to take something on, to have an idea, create it, develop it, and go for it within the constraints of KPIs, outcomes, time management, budget, etc. So that's the challenge. And we are going to test new ideas within those constraints as well. So I've only come up with one sort of strategy for me, and I start my new job next week. So, I'll let you know in 12 months' time whether it's worked or not. We do have reality. We do have all those KPIs. I do have some quite unskilled staff who are coming and wanting direction. And I have other staff who can fly. I've got this need to treat them all differently as individuals. And if you have looked at leadership models, it's very much around a situational leadership model where my style of leadership will be very dependent upon where the follower is up to in terms of their experience and their comfortability within their role. And we have got an enormous amount of pressure. So here's my number one gig for my new job. Take time. Take pressure off myself in terms of the day-to-day rigour. So I'm going to try and ditch some of the work that I have to do. Some of my own KPIs are just going to have to go. To give me time to build the team, to get to know the team, to understand what their aspirations are, to understand what drives them and what peeves them, to understand where they want to be in 12 months' time, what they want to learn, to give them time to vision, to give us creative time as a group. We're all going to have to take time. Do you know how hard that is? You're busy? I've heard someone say he's never been busier in his life. Right? You know how hard that is to go, stop. That's leadership. And for me, that's what I'm going to give to our team. I'm going to get us to stop every now and then. Maybe it's a weekly basis. Maybe it's a daily basis. And start thinking about some of the big picture things in our business. Because when we spend all our time here, what I call working in the business, we've got no time to work on the business. And that's what I'm going to strive to do. With respect to the team building and the motivation, I'll be really interested to go off to the edge to see what they have to say about motivation. But I agree with the comment that it is more than remuneration. If we're paying people adequately well, then it's much more than that. And everything I've read has boiled down to three things. People are motivated by autonomy, that ability to take something on and to run with it and to feel like I've achieved it with the support of some leadership. People really want mastery. They want to get better at stuff. They don't want to just sit. So if we have people doing the same things all the time, then that's not particularly motivating. We will share the chair, we'll share the responsibilities, we'll take on different tasks. And that's why my first engagement with staff has been around what's their personal plan for the next 12 months. What do they want to learn, and what do they want to contribute, and what do they want to have a try at. And so we can help go with self-mastery and that sense of ownership and working on something that is bigger. So it's a contribution to a whole. And so we have to all understand what the whole looks like. And that's where the visions and the shared visions come in. That opportunity to close our eyes and say, what do we really want for people with disability out of the NDIS in our region? What do we want in terms of participation in sport and recreation? Volunteerism. And we need to do some of that so that we are all working towards something that's bigger. The last one I've put in there as a reminder to myself, and I don't know about you, but if you own your own business, or if you've ever worked for yourself, pace setting is probably something that you engage with, because you are being paid by the hour and you need to get the job done. And the quicker you go, the sooner you can move on to the next job and get the next job done. And you probably overload yourself anyway, because that's what people do when they work for themselves. So I put that one there just as a caution, because I know that I'm a pace setter, that I like to get things done, that I need to be very mindful in terms of working with teams, that can actually be quite unmotivating. It can put people out of their comfort zone, it can actually take the fun away, and it can actually feel like you're being driven like a chariot. Alright? So that's my little challenge to myself. They're the things that I'm going to use to build the team, and be very mindful of the difference between managing them and actually leading them. I wanted to finish just with a piece, and this will test my technological know-how. And I don't know if anyone's seen it before, but it's something I find quite inspiring, and it's called The Gift of the Goose. And if you know about geese, the first thing I'll tell you is that a goose stimulates them to migrate. Says, honk, 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 time for us to go, and off they go. And they all know exactly where they want to be, and they're all committed to the migration. But I'd like to share with you a couple of other things about how the geese operate. If I can find it, here we go. And I will read it for you because it might be difficult to read. Lessons from geese. As each goose flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the birds that follow. Think about your team. By flying in V formation, the whole flock adds 71% extra flying range. Lesson. People who share a sense of community can help each other get where they're going more easily because they're travelling on the trust of one another. When a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of flying alone. It quickly moves back to take advantage of the lifting power of the birds in front. Lesson. If we have as much sense as geese, we stay in formation with those headed where we want to go. We're willing to accept their help and give our help to others. When the lead goose gets tired, it drops back into the formation and another goose flies to the point position. Lesson. It pays to take turns doing the hard tasks. We should respect and protect each other's unique arrangement of skills, capabilities, talents and resources. The geese flying in formation honk to encourage those up front to keep up the speed. Lesson. We need to make sure our honking is encouraging in groups where there is encouragement, production is much greater. Individual empowerment results from quality honking. When a goose gets sick, two geese drop out of formation to follow it and protect it. Lesson. If we have as much sense as geese, we will stand by each other in difficult times as well as when we are strong. And then a fair bit of honking. I showed my staff, and of course honking, you know, they had all sorts of fun with the honking thing, and there should be a lot more quality honking in our organisation. But what it does actually remind me to do is to take turns, to listen to the team, and that we are actually only as strong as every group or every individual in our team. So to build up, I said before, we're quite diverse, so to build up some of the young ones in our team will only strengthen our team. And to take turns and allow people to take the lead, to drop back, to not always be the person who has the idea or or is the one who is presenting to the staff, but to give people a turn to present their points of view and to elicit great ideas, because Leisure Networks wants to be a great idea organisation, so that's where we need to be. So I hope you think about that when you go back to your workplace, and maybe take a little look at the gifts from the geese again when you are on your Google. But thank you very much for inviting me here.
Thanks, Sue. Isn't that great? I'm sure that there is something in that for everybody, something you can take back to your businesses or wherever you lead, you know, your family, your community groups, your network of friends. We all lead in different situations wherever we are, so there's some really good things there to keep in mind and to think about. Now, Michelle, I'm sorry, I almost forgot about it. Please, that's all right. Michelle's from City of Greater Geelong, and she's our local organiser of the Small Business Festival, of which our next breakfast in August, the 20-something?
26th, I think.
In August, sometime, yeah. There's actually, talking about that, on the table are some little magnets with all of our dates on there. I can get them out, but if you'd like to take one of those home and stick it on your fridge, please feel free. 26th of August, that's when it is. We'll be presenting here our Small Business Festival event. So, Michelle, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I am a local. I love living in Clifton Springs, and I'm very passionate about seeing all of the businesses prosper here, as well as the wider region, of course. Our unit is being rebranded to Enterprise Geelong shortly. You probably would have heard all about it. But that's in line with the Mayor's vision to create jobs for our community. So long term, hopefully our kids can have jobs here locally. I encourage everyone to log on to the website. It'll be live probably the 1st of July, so that's Geelong Australia /GSBF. But I'm sure Anne and Diane will send through all of the information through to everybody. There's plenty of events on, so ranging from leadership to starting a business, marketing, a huge range. We've got about 40 events, so I encourage everyone to come along. Thanks.